In today's video, we will try to understand what ACAS says about unfair dismissal. Now, what is ACAS? ACAS stands for Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service. It basically aims to improve organizations and working life through better employment relation, working with employers and employees to solve problems and improve performance. So ACAS gives us the guidance about what and how the employer and employee should proceed. So what is dismissal? Let's try to understand that first. A dismissal is when an employer ends an employee's contract. It usually means the same as being sacked or fired. It is important that an employer uses a fair and reasonable procedure to decide whether to dismiss someone. Before an employer dismisses an employee, they should believe they have valid reason, follow a full and fair procedure, usually in line with the ACAS code of practice, make a decision that's balanced, consistent, and as fair as possible. Procedure an employer follows will be taken into account if an employee's claim for an unfair dismissal and the cases reach an employment tribunal. Now let's try to understand the giving the reasons for dismissal. If an employer dismisses an employee, they should tell them why they have been dismissed, when their employment contract will end, their notice period, if there is one, their right to appeal the decision. It's good idea to put it in writing, for example, in a letter or email. Now let's try to understand when an employer must put the reason in writing. An employer must put the reason in writing for an employee who's pregnant or on maternity leave, regardless of how long they have been employed. Other employees have the right to ask their employer for a written statement giving the reason for their dismissal if they are legally classed as an employee. Now, what is legally classed as an employee? We will discuss later on in this video. Have been employed for 2 years. Any employee working for more than 2 years, the rule changes and we have to follow the complete procedure. If an employee asks, their employer must give them a reason in writing within 14 days. If an employee believes that the dismissal is unfair, in that case, what's next? An employee can appeal against a dismissal. The employer must follow a fair and reasonable procedure. Otherwise, the employee might be able to make a claim for unfair dismissal, even if the reason for dismissal was valid. Now let's try to understand what makes someone an employee. Someone is likely to be legally classed as an employee if most of these things apply. They are required to work regularly unless they are on leave. They can usually expect work to be consistently available. They cannot unreasonably refuse to do the work. They get statutory paid holiday. They might also have additional contractual holiday entitlement. They are subject to the employer's discipline and grievance procedure. They need to give notice to their employer if they want to take maternity, paternity or adoption leave. They cannot get someone else to do their job. Their employer decides how, when and where they do their work. Their employer provides the material, tools and equipment for their work. So if most of these apply, that means you are an employee. But if most of these do not apply, then someone may be classed as a self-employed or a worker. Now let's discuss the employment rights. The employee's rights includes a written statement of employment particulars outlining their job rights and responsibilities, national minimum wage, paid holidays, pay slips, protection for whistleblowing, protection against discrimination, protection from less favorable treatment for working part-time, making statutory flexible working request. As long as they meet any eligibility criteria, they also entitled to statutory sick pay, ordinary parental leave, shared parental leave and pay, maternity leave and pay, paternity leave and pay, adoption leave and pay, parental bereavement leave and pay, time off for dependent, time off for public duties, redundancy pay after 2 years of continuous service if their role becomes redundant, claim unfair dismissal or automatically unfair dismissal, get minimum notice period if they are dismissed or made redundant, protection against dismissal or taking action over the health or safety issues. If an employee believes the dismissal is unfair, in that case, an employee can appeal against a dismissal. The employer must follow a fair and reasonable procedure. Otherwise, the employee might be able to make a claim for unfair dismissal, even if the reason for dismissal was valid. Now, let's discuss types of dismissal. So, we have three different main broad category if we divide them. Number one is gross misconduct. Number two is redundancy. Number three is dismissal because of long-term illness. If we explain them in detail, so gross misconduct is example of fraud, physical violence, gross negligence, serious insubordination, for example refusing to take reasonable orders from a supervisor that you don't want to work or won't follow the instructions. When we say redundancy, in that case we are taking an example where a closing or has been closed already, changing the type or number of roles needed to do certain work, changing location. And when we say dismissal because of long-term illness, that means, for example, they have considered all other options and it is not possible for employee to do their job. The employee's inability to work has significant impact on the business. So this is another reason that can be considered. Now let's discuss dismissals with and without notice. So what dismissal is, we have already discussed. We have already discussed types of dismissal. Now we will discuss dismissals with and without notice. So when we say notice pay, what does that mean? Most of the time, the person who's been dismissed is entitled to the same pay they normally get if they work their notice period. The employee's final pay might be different from their usual monthly or weekly pay because of things like how much holiday they have taken, how much money being deducted from training courses, being off work. Their employer might need to pay outstanding money, for example, bonuses or overtime. And when we discuss about dismissals without notice for gross misconduct, in that case, an employer can dismiss an employee without giving notice if it's because of gross misconduct. This is when an employee has done something that's very serious or has very serious effects. For example, health and safety measures are not taken place. The employer must have followed a fair procedure. When an employee is dismissed for gross misconduct, they leave immediately, do not have notice period, do not get notice pay. There are some things the employer must still pay them. These includes any work they have not been paid for yet, any accrued holiday entitlement. This means any holiday they have built up but not used by the date they leave. Any expenses they are owed. The employer might also need to pay them for the other work benefits unless their contract says something different. Now let's discuss dismissals, unfair dismissals, the last part. It's important to understand what unfair dismissal is by law. This is because different rights might apply depending on the circumstances. It might be unfair dismissal if an employee worked for their employer for at least 2 years and any of the followings apply. Number one, there was no fair reason for dismissal. Number two, the reason was not enough to justify dismissing them. Number three, the employer did not follow a fair procedure. Now, when we say about fair procedure, that means code of practice on disciplinary and grievance procedures. This is published on 11th of March 2015. I'll put the link of this in the description. You can get access to it. It's 47 points basically, which will help you in understanding what is the code of practice. Just like every law, this is also a law. So for example, Point number 11, the meeting should be held without unreasonable delay whilst allowing the employee reasonable time to prepare their case. So this code of practice will guide you what the actual law is. So it's a bit long. I'll put the link in the description and hope this helps.